Hey.
Hey.
Hi,
Hey.
guys.
Hey.
All right. Welcome to Cosplay 101, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, we'll get this out of the way because it's the most important thing. I want to thank Aradani Studios for putting on AradaniCon, which is technically what this is living inside of, which is a completely online convention, including panels like this and better ones that aren't this, I'm sure. And there's even dance parties and a lobby, and there's a Discord set up, and they've put in just an unreasonable amount of work into this. So thanks to the Belachiks and the rest of the folks at Aradani for doing this. It is much, much appreciated, not just by me, but by the rest of the community, I think. I've heard lots of really, really good, excited feedback about it. So thanks to them for doing this. Just to give you guys kind of the rundown of how this will work, we will introduce ourselves and talk about how we got into cosplay, and then we will talk kind of about the basics of cosplay, so coming at this as a total noob. We'll talk a little bit about how cosplay got started forever ago, its progression, where it is now, and then how you get started making your first cosplay, from character creation all the way to making the thing, all the way to wearing the thing. So that's what we'll do today. And then at the end of it, we'll set aside some time for doing questions and answers, which we will do through the chat. I will try my best to keep an eye on the chat as we go along, but I would highly recommend you save any specific questions for us until the end when I say we're doing questions and answers, because otherwise it's going to get buried and I might never find it again. So that's where we are. um, so we'll do introductions, and I'm doing not what I did yesterday because, again, my channel, my rules, and I want someone else to go first. So, Raven, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, she's about to
Man,
take a drink.
I thought I went first yesterday.
I went first yesterday. Okay, fine. You're out of it. Anthony, you go.
Hey. Yeah. So, hey, everyone. I'm Anthony Mills. Also, MindBlownFX on the gram, if you're a grammer. Um, which part do I start with? How did I get into cosplay?
Yeah, what do you do? Who are you, man?
I mean, what do I do? I'm everything, man. Like, I guess I'd be an entertainer, like a voice actor, cosplayer, all around cut up, contact wearer, long hair haver, professional ninja, dedicated warrior. Uh, I could do this all day, but
Please
yeah,
don't,
I mean,
but I love you.
no,
All
I won't.
around
I don't want to.
BA.
I want to take up all the time. But I guess my like fame stuff. I used to make a lot of stuff with resin. I used to do a lot of EVA foam. Now I just wear a lot of contacts, and let everybody else make my costumes because I don't have as much time as I used to.
I feel that.
Special
Dee,
effects.
Dee, would you like to
Um,
introduce yourself?
well, I'm not going to be as flamboyant as he was.
We're
I'm
just,
Dee Volpe with
it's
Cosplay Collective.
just a different kind of flamboyance.
I know. I run a nonprofit where we visit hospitals and a lot of different places, do events at local zoos and charity events. We provide uh, hospitality suites at conventions like MTAC, which should have been going on this weekend. Um, for they're all for cosplayers for relaxing and for repair and getting to know the community. Um, we do a lot of panels. We also work on helping cosplayers get into cosplaying and also teach maker skills for cosplay.
I will say,
Yeah.
as a cosplayer in Middle Tennessee, I am eternally grateful, not just to Cosplay Collective, but also to Dee and Nancy for being all around excellent human beings in the cosplay community, because that's needed. We had a whole panel on it yesterday
Thank
about
you.
how that's needed. So thank you for being here. Raven, you have to go
Okay,
now.
I'm ready. Hi, I am Christina, aka Bewitched Raven, and I started in cosplay because I had a friend in 2010 go,
you need to come to Dragon Con. And I was like, what is that? Because I grew up in the country in Tennessee and none of this stuff made sense. And they were like, no, just come down. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it was like being like, I found my people. So I took that theater degree I got in college and ran with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am so glad you're here. You're one of my favorite people. Raven and I have done a ton of panels together at conventions
Because I love you.
all over the
I love everybody on
Southeast.
this panel.
I
Like,
know.
this is like, I know everyone and I love them all.
We are really excited for everyone who's watching and hanging out in chat, but I can tell you ultimately the four of us are just really excited to be hanging out together. We spent about 15 minutes before this stream just catching up and talking about how much we missed each other. So,
Oh,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
Human interaction is great.
all right, I will do the thing now, I guess. I'm Ginger O'Snap. I'm a professional cosplayer and costumer. I'm also a burlesque performer. I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee. I dabble in some film and television work, and that's what I do. I make costumes and I wear costumes and I do dumb things at conventions and I hang out with you guys, and that's
Yeah.
my life. So, being stuck at home has definitely been, um, in theory, I feel a lot like that Twilight Zone moment where it's, but there was time because I this is the thing, I was like, if I could just be in my house and not have things that I have to go to, think of all the things I would get done. But that's still not the case, and I don't really know what's happening with my time or energy. It's going somewhere, but depending on how long this goes on, I think let's hold each other accountable for our productivity and our creativity and see see what we can get done. I've talked to a
I'm
lot of
down
people
for
about
that.
that, and I think that we're all kind of struggling with the same thing on that front. So I will go into a little bit of real basic kind of what is cosplay. Cosplay is a portmanteau. Isn't that a fun word? It means it's a combination of two words, costume and play. So it's the combination of not just wearing a costume that you either made or acquired. There's no requirement for one or the other in cosplay, but that you also in some way embody a character. You are playing as that character. There are plenty of people who like wearing costumes that they either made or acquired and they don't necessarily like the role play part of it. They don't like embodying the character. Totally fine. Probably not necessarily cosplay at the heart of the word though, if you get into it. Um, a lot of people associate cosplay with Japan, which is totally fair because once they got their hands on it, they freaking ran with it and it's much appreciated because a lot of the popularity that cosplay has gained now is because of Japan and Japanese cosplayers. But cosplay actually started in the late 30s in New York at the first what would become Worldcon. A couple attended the convention in costume that the girlfriend of the couple had made because they thought that was a thing that people did there. Turns out it wasn't. They were the only ones who did it, but it caught on. And the next year, they actually had more people show up in costume, and they were the first convention, I think, that actually had a costume contest slash masquerade. So from there, it just kind of snowballed. More and more conventions started to pop up around different fandoms. People wore costumes to those, and then made its way to Japan, exploded as we talked about, and then the internet happened. And the internet is really what I think for those of us, this is gonna, I think all of us, maybe the majority of us in this stream, started cosplaying before the wealth of resources existed on the internet that currently exist. So we
Mhm.
really
Big fact.
spent some time kind of like going hard in the paint without a lot of help, literally and figuratively. So I will say for those of you getting started now, you're in a really good place because the internet is full of not just tutorials that can help you along, but people. who you can connect with, who can help you troubleshoot things and kind of give you a different perspective. I find that reaching out to people and talking about things that I'm starting that maybe are new to me, they come at it from an angle that I had not considered before. And usually it's an angle that will save me a lot of time and effort. So I highly recommend you following cosplayers, talking to cosplayers, just kind of talking to each other and creating what I refer to as your nerd herd around you that can help you in this process. So, all of that to say, why do people cosplay? Why do they do it? You know, is it for the fame? Is it for the ridiculous amounts of money that we make? Is it for the
Is it
challenge of
to make
crafting?
excuses for all the voices in my head?
Right. Is it to justify that? Is it because you already have so much expendable income? You need somewhere to just dump it all into. You just don't want that anymore. You know, those are all valid reasons.
That's it.
I think the reason that I do it, I come from like Raven, I come from a theater background, musical theater specifically, and dance. So I have been a character and playing my entire life, and I love that. And I don't think that that's something we grow out of. I think that this is just an excuse to continue to play make believe and to run around and act like whatever the thing is that I want to be at that particular moment. But what's the thing that hooked you guys on cosplay? Like, what do you love so much about it?
Go ahead, Raven.
Not
Go.
everybody at once.
Right?
I mean, just like Ginger, like I came from a theater background, but I think that that theater part of you comes from the loving the idea of like getting to create your own reality. And I think cosplay is part of that, except for rather than creating your own from scratch, you get to step into a reality of some kind of fictional world that you're already just in love with. So cosplay is kind of, I mean, it's kind of escapism, but it's in a good way, I'd like to think, in a fun, imaginative way.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, it's escapism. I was waiting to say that word myself. But, you know, I don't come from a theater background. That would have been totally unheard of when I was younger, because that just wasn't me then. I come from more of an art and maker background, so I love making the costumes and the pieces. So I like the variety of the art that you make from it.
Mhm.
Um, so, and I just think the community is a wonderful community. I think most people have big hearts in this community. Most. There's always those exceptions.
Well, cosplay and conventions are kind of a microcosm for the rest of society, I suppose. So, you know, there's
But
always
totally.
always going to be a couple of weeds. What about you, Anthony?
Mhm.
So when I really dove into cosplay, I was like, you know what? The real world, like going to work, paying bills, being responsible, that's not fun.
No.
So I was like, well, this thing exists. I mean, I've always loved Halloween as a kid. I remember my grandma using bath towels for me to be Batman, and then you pick up sticks, and now you're a Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
And then when I got older, I was like, wait, this is a thing that other people are doing, and it's way better than I have here. And just dove into it. So I'm with everybody on the escapism, but I think that's okay, man. Like
Oh
everybody
yeah.
needs an outlet. I'm a big
Yeah.
proponent of everybody needs an outlet. So you might be big into fitness, you might be into cars, you might be into collecting stamps. I don't know. We're into cosplay, and I like to dive into what I'm into.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That escapism can come in many forms. It doesn't have to be as exaggerated as cosplay. So I think it's for people who are criti- criticativism.
Wow. We
Yeah,
have we
yeah.
have
hmm
gone
hmm
off the rails already, and
who
we
are
are
Grammar
critiquing
is
Critical.
dead.
cosplayers.
Critical.
Oh my gosh. Critical, that's the word. That's the word my
There you
brain
go.
she got
tried.
there.
Thank you. Critical of cosplayers. Like I think it you should take a step back and look at what you do to escape your daily life. What's your hobby to do to make something fun and adventurous? So
I mean, I think that fandom at its heart. That's why a lot of us love the things that we love, right? It's watching people do things that are not like our daily lives most of the time. Why why do we love superheroes so much? Why do we love fantasy
Mhm.
so much? And I think that that's why. It's because it's not us, doing our laundry and our dishes. Um, but I
Which
think
is the byproduct of cosplay.
right.
Yeah.
It's the things that don't get done because I've been sewing all day. So let's start kind of at the ground, which is making the choice. What is the character that you want to cosplay? I've had this debate with a lot of people about what characters qualify for cosplay. Any of them. Any fandom, any
Anything.
media, a book, a podcast character, a game character, someone you made up in your own dang head, that all counts because they're all characters. So, from my perspective, any character counts. If you disagree with me, that's your opinion. Anyone here disagree with me? You think anything's off limits for cosplay as far as characters go?
Not at
Nah, I
all,
think
really. I mean,
No. Yeah, I think
anything. Hey, I think you need to take into consideration what you're doing it for. Like,
For
if
sure.
you're participating in one of our events, it doesn't need to be a recognizable character or
Right.
something. But for cons, I mean, we go to DragonCon every year and we always come up with some very obscure things,
Yeah,
which we
yeah,
have
I
this
think
year
it's not
already.
about who you cosplay, but the environment you're cosplaying it in. I always like to tell
hmm
people like if the sun's out, let's cover our bits. But if it's after dark and a parent has their kid out, that's on the parent, you know? So you got to kind of be aware of your surroundings.
yeah, and I will say, like, I, as someone who does appearances, who's asked to do appearances as a cosplayer at events, I certainly take the environment and the theme of the event into account. If it's an anime convention, anime costumes probably a good idea. Children's events, characters that children will recognize and that are friendly to them are probably a good idea. But other than that, I say, like, choose a character. Ultimately, choose a character that you love something about them, whether that's the way they look, the way they act, something about their story. It can be any part of them that you love, but I think if you're not really invested in some piece of that character, you're not going to have a good time building
Yeah.
it and putting it together because you don't have the motivation. For me anyway, I wouldn't have the motivation to do that if I were just running through a list of characters, I suppose, that I wanted to cosplay because they existed. um, so once you make the choice of who you're going to cosplay, um, I think this is the biggest step, and it's often the step that gets missed, is planning. So before you actually do anything, before you spend your money, planning what you're going to do. I would love to kind of talk to you guys about how you plan and how you research what you're going to do. Are there any tools or apps? Do you just make lists and post them all over your house? Like, how are you keeping track of what needs to be done, what you need to acquire, and things like that? Do you have systems? You're just all over the place?
uh, yeah,
Um,
here's my system. I see it and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then I'll go buy a bunch of stuff and be like, yeah, I can make that. And then I'm sitting in a pile of crafts and I'm having anxiety. So I said all that to say this is why planning is important.
This was a
Never
don't be
rush
like
it.
Anthony moment.
Learn from my mistakes,
That's
please.
ultimately, I think that's why we're here. We may not have pearls of wisdom for you in how to do it right, but we can definitely tell you how we've done it wrong. Uh,
Accurate.
D, Raven, how do you guys plan your costumes before you get started on them?
it really depends on the costume itself. Some can be very elaborate. Some, I repurpose. So, I see something at Goodwill that matches that would work for a costume. I might start from there and then I plan. I'm putting together a couple of elaborate ones that I'm actually literally writing things out and planning them, getting the photos and deciding on the exact materials that I want to use. So I tend to be a little organized. Um, Once I start, I usually keep it very organized.
Yeah.
Um, Even like when I made my Mando, I had all the parts laid out specifically in a specific area, even to make sure I had everything done with each piece
Yeah.
and stuff. So,
I
it's
crowd
all depends on how you work,
Hmm.
really.
Raven, what were you saying?
I'm I crowdsource. I'm lucky enough to have friends who cosplay or who actively will be handlers for cosplayers. And I mean, I will idea vomit all over the place, and we'll just sit and we'll discuss, and then finally something will click, and then something else will click, and that will snowball into a design, which then allows an actual creation to come forth from that. So, if I think if I didn't have people like you wonderful people to talk through ideas with, I would probably be very lost.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I tend to, when I'm going into the planning phase, I kind of go into this making this matrix of how fast do I want to get this done? What quality do I want it to be at the end of it?
Yep.
And how much do I want to spend on it? And then you kind of have to chart those things out and see where everything intersects. Um, sometime the majority of the costumes that I make, especially if it's a character that I am, it's on the like the bucket list of costumes. I am one of those screen accurate, page accurate. I will spend time and money I don't have yet to make sure that it looks exactly how I want it to look. But then every now and then there's a character that I just want to throw together, even either for a one-time event. I don't think I'm going to get that much mileage out of it, or it's just something for fun. And I don't. It doesn't have to be accurate, or if it's something that I'm creating out of my own brain space, like I do an anthropomorphized human version of Tom Servo. I didn't spend all of my time and energy making that Tom Servo because I wasn't bound to the restrictions of what someone else had already created that I was trying to replicate. I use Trello, which is a way to make lists, and then within those lists create cards of things that need to be done on those lists, and then you can just move them. So I have a to do, doing, and done for all of the things that need to be done for a specific costume, and that includes. I mean, I will sit down and break down the components of, here's the wig I need to purchase. So that wig goes on the to-do list. I need to buy that. Here's the fabric I need to purchase. And then I break down the costume into the pieces of construction. So I need to draft a pattern or find a pattern. I need to cut the pattern. I need to cut the fabric. Like I really break it down into every single step. And then I can just drag at a glance. I see what needs to be done, what's still being worked on, and I can just move things around. Um, I do still also keep paper lists of things. I don't know why I keep duplicate lists. It's really not efficient, but I like writing things down, I guess. So I also
I
keep,
do too. I do too.
I'll do some sketching of things, especially if I'm trying to figure out construction of a specific garment. I'll sketch it, and then there will be a list associated with that part of it. Um, I will say part of planning is that I learned the hard way is figuring out, is there a piece of this that's going to require some sort of new method or skill or technique from you for the construction, something you need to learn? And what's your like ramp up time for that? How quickly are you going to be able to actually produce that at the end of it? And then are you going to need a whole bunch of new tools in order to do the thing? This is where I champion maker spaces and groups like Cosplay Collective that, in the before times we would get together and costume and craft together, because borrowing people's tools and expertise is a really great way to find out if this is a skill that you're going to want to continue with in the future without investing all of your money into the equipment that's necessary to get started.
Mhm.
Um, I learned pretty quickly that I don't enjoy working with leather. I'm not a leathersmith. There are people out there who love it and who are very, very good at it. And I'm glad that I know them and that I learned that the hard way because I did not invest in all of the tools required for leatherworking because I can guarantee you I would not be using them right now because I don't like it. So definitely plan your cosplay. And if you're not sure what all components you need, I just take a look at the character and break it down. It can be something as simple as I see one black jacket. I see one green skirt. Like, here are the things I need. And then you can start deciding, do I want to make those things? Do I want to buy those things? Do I want to go to a thrift store and find those things? Like that, there are all of these valid options for how you can acquire and complete each step along the way. I think. Do you guys have anything else that you would add to the planning stages?
You're way more organized than I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah, you're
It's a
super
Even
organized,
no,
me.
but
man,
you make a
it's a
great point.
personality. This is like a pathological problem that I have. Like, this is not this is not a good thing, I
I just
promise.
have like piles, and I'm like, this pile will turn into this costume eventually.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
so
that's how my brain works.
let's pull back the curtain here. The
I'm somewhere in
physical
between the
shop.
two.
Yeah, I will say my physical shop is not nearly as organized as my actual planning the costume. Like, my piles are real. They're there. They just connect to a more organized thought stream behind them. It's like an organized
Yeah.
chaos, I guess.
Yes, I love the organized chaos.
It's life. Let's talk a little about found pieces, like not just the construction of things, but how do you guys reuse things? Do you thrift? Do you recycle things? One of my favorite things to do with thrift store things, especially if I'm looking for something really specific, I'm probably not going to find it at a thrift store, but I love taking clothes from thrift stores that are otherwise ugly but fit me really well and taking them apart and using them for patterns. um what else do
Smart.
you
That's a
guys
good
do?
idea.
Thanks. What do you guys do as far as thrifting and recycling, and do you have any tips about that? Closet cosplay in general.
Do it. It
Well,
is still cosplay.
yeah.
Very true.
Nancy, who's not here again, she
Nancy.
does a lot. She does a lot of stuff that is from Goodwill. She repurposes a lot of stuff. Most of her costumes are repurposed. Most of them. Yeah, most of them actually. But you can always even find just material that you might want to use for something. So I'll look through specific clothes that might have the type of fabric that I need or pattern that I want or something, and I might buy that and just cut it up. Um, Sometimes I get leather or pleather from purses that I get at Goodwill if I just need a
Yes.
little bit or something.
Yeah, Goodwill's a
Goodwill
great place for
materials
leather.
are great for lining.
It sure is. Um, then especially if you do like steampunk, you look at the curtains. The curtains that are there, you can get great material for steampunk with a lot of people turning in their curtains that are inspired from that era.
Yeah, and I
So,
I really encourage folks to do things like that and think out of the box. So, like, if you find something and it's kind of what you wanted, it's just not quite there, what can you do? Like, really look at that garment and see what you can do to make that more of what you want. Are there alterations that can be made to that existing garment to turn it into what you want rather than you having to start from scratch on that?
And don't let that stop you from being like, I made
Right.
this. That's I get a lot of people who'll do that, and I'm like, altering is making.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
Accurate.
okay to be cost efficient. You still made it.
for
It's
sure.
okay.
I will say, as someone who has judged a lot of costume contests and specifically like the workmanship and craftsmanship side of costume contests, be very honest with the judges about what was altered versus what was created from scratch. But honestly, that's the only time that you should feel the need to justify
All the
the
time.
difference, because outside of that, you made your costume. Even if you assembled it from pieces in your closet and you went to Goodwill and it's completely repurposed closet cosplay, you made that. You put it together. You had the ability to source those things together. So take pride in saying that, yeah, I put this together. I made this costume. um for sure, there's definitely a lot of like shame around the fact that people didn't, craft everything from the ground up. And i
Yeah.
um I have had some when I was still competing, I've had judges, ask me, and I've been in and I'm like, yes, I made everything that you see on my human body. I made this hoop skirt, I made the petticoats, I made the whole thing. And then the judge said, did you make your shoes? Nope.
No.
I didn't, because they're shoes and I'm not a cobbler and you can't see them. They're under my dress.
I'm
But
actually starting to do that though.
I
You
As a
are
cobbler machine.
you
support you.
are superhuman.
Yeah,
No,
unless
I'm
they're
not.
very specific, I don't make my shoes. I have definitely altered
No.
shoes, but for the most part, that's not. I don't care. Um, don't have any shame about
No.
whatever level of made versus altered versus sourced versus just bought off the internet. Like there is
Yeah.
a difference between costuming and cosplaying for me. Those are different. And so if you are a maker and you are a costumer, you're making the thing. You're altering the thing, you're making the thing, you're creating it from pieces and turning it into something else. If you're cosplaying, there's no indication to me of where that costume came from. If you bought it from the internet and you're running around acting like your character, you're cosplaying, and
Yes.
do it. Please do that.
There's one cosplayer out there whom I just love, and his name is Night Mage, and he'll get
Yeah.
like Amazon costumes and then add to them.
Yeah.
Like he'll
Mhm.
paint them or build something and add to it, and it, you'll be like, this is before and this is after, and it just shows you what you can do with repurposing and enhancing something that already
Right.
exists.
Well, and knowing your limits too. So like I pride myself on making the vast majority of my costumes. The things that I don't make are my like printed spandex morph suits, like my Spidey suit.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
not make my Spidey suit because I do not print spandex. That's not a thing that I do. Um my Samus Zero suit, I did not make my Zero suit. It's the same thing. It's a printed spandex thing, but I definitely painted those and added some shading and moved some
Yeah.
things around on those. So don't be afraid to take something that you've bought and you're like, yeah, this is almost it. This is kind of right, and see how you can turn that into something that looks much better than what you actually got. And then you've turned a store-bought costume into something you altered and actually put some love and sweat into, which is cool too, I think. And
Yes, totally.
um other things to consider kind of as you're planning is comfortability. Is there any way on the front end you can make this costume more comfortable for you to wear at a convention or an event? I highly recommend, if you're sewing something from scratch or you're altering something, to consider if you can put pockets in it somewhere. um, we all have phones, we all
Yeah.
have things. You have a box of Pocky that you carry with you at the con, whatever. You're going to want to put that somewhere. For years at the beginning of costuming and cosplaying, was the worst about putting pockets in things. I was like, I just never thought about it. I was like, what the hell would I need a pocket for? I was just like,
Mm.
why? You do. You need a pocket. Put it
Yep.
somewhere. Um,
Mhm.
think about that, and also think about things like if you're building armor, where it bends. Does it bend? Can you bend your arms and knees? Can you sit in it? Some of the things based on the design of the armor or the costume, there's just not a sleek or good way to put a bend in a place that you would otherwise want one. So that's your decision point of, do I want it to be 100% accurate to perhaps this cartoon, this illustration that is not based on a real human being because they don't have to bend their real arms and legs. And
Mhm.
if you do and you want it to be accurate, just know that that's probably not a costume you're going to want to wear for 9 hours a day because you can't move around properly in it. So really think about the wearability of the costume, and that includes your shoes.
That also includes, consider the temperature.
Ugh,
Mm.
If it's
Yep.
hot, you might give yourself heat stroke wearing something that's made for cold weather. So just
Game
keep
of
things in
Thrones,
mind with that.
cosplay, DragonCon, lots of wool, lots of fur.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
And
it's hot
and that's
That
there.
not
kind
to
of
say
I've
endo.
been
you
there.
shouldn't you shouldn't make those for those weathers, but somebody taught me a great trick for things like Dragon Con where it's like sweltering, getting that fabric that like absorbs that can when it gets wet it
Mhm.
gets cold, and lining your costume with that or lining your foam armor with that.
Hmm.
And that's like the easiest way to keep yourself from passing out.
Or for those of you in bulkier builds, cooling vests are a thing. They
Yeah.
have inserts that you cool ahead of time, and then you can slide them into the vest. They do. Obviously, you couldn't wear that under something really clingy because it's going to be pretty obvious, but you can definitely wear it under a larger build. And I've done that for costumes that I've built for other people that have then like walked in the DragonCon parade and things like that. I highly recommend cooling vests in that situation because cosplay is certainly not a reason you should be having heat stroke. Please.
Yeah, our Chewbacca wears one all the
That's
time. Every time he wears it,
I
as it gets
imagine
really
he
hot.
does.
But, and also if you're electronically inclined and it's a bigger costume, you can actually build a circulating
Fans
air
are
conditioner
super
for it.
important. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My Nuka-Cola helmet has just PC fans that I built into it, mostly so that I can breathe when it's on, which is a thing that I'm glad I thought of.
Picky.
Right? But also because that's nice. It's real nice when I put that helmet on. It is a
Yeah.
little loud, but other than that, it's nice and comfy in there. It's like my little personal air conditioner. Thinking about props, my biggest recommendation when you're building props is really think about how you're going to keep them safe, and make sure that they fit within the guidelines of the majority of events that you would take them to. So just think about that. Don't carry real weapons. That's going to be a problem. Like
No real
this
weapons.
is
Yeah.
just
Don't
like
do it.
it seems
And
common
how you're
sense,
going to
but
transport.
every convention that I've been to, there's always at least the one person who doesn't understand why their actual sword can't come into the convention. So,
Right.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think D, I heard you say how you're going to transport it.
How you're going to transport it, because if it's a bigger prop, can it come apart and
Yes, if you
things
can
like that.
build joints and tear apart points like breakaway points on a weapon, please do it. My Sephiroth sword has none of those because there was no good way to build it into it, and she is long and she does not fit in most cars.
Well,
So
and like real
yeah.
weapons are heavy.
Yes, they
I'd rather
are.
make it out of
Yeah.
foam. Like
Yeah. Yeah, or anything lighter than an actual weapon
yeah.
would be, for sure. Um as you're going through your planning, I also highly recommend you think about the undergarments that are going to be under your costume. It's a part that gets forgotten a lot of times, especially from new cosplayers. I teach an entire panel on undergarments under
Yeah.
costuming because it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. I can make this short and sweet from my end, and then if you guys have any undergarment hints, tips, or tricks, um, gentlemen, Google dance belt.
That's it.
Yes.
Google
Belt.
dance belt.
Hey, let me dive in because I want to speak on
Yeah, I'm
behalf
gonna
of
let
the
you.
gentleman.
You go.
I ain't
You
wearing
go.
a dance belt. I don't even dance. No. Let's talk about what it is. It is underwear that smooths curves of your body. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to give you an example. You might like Spider-Man. He's very common.
I do.
If you dress up as Spider-Man without wearing a dance belt, you look weird or like a creeper or whatever you want to call it. It's just not appropriate. I'm just being honest. This is not trying
Please
to be
do.
rude.
No,
I
it's
want to
real.
give it to him up front so you don't go through that. So
Think about
get your
also
dance
like
belt.
And especially talking Spider-Man, Green Lantern, people that have tight costumes on.
Yup.
Yeah,
think about the eye level of a child.
Yup.
there you go.
Yup.
Think about that.
I love Raven. Think of the children. Please
Think of the children. Will someone please think of the children?
I mean, just think of the rest of us, like, and yourself. Honestly, no matter what you have going on in your
Not
dance
flattering.
belt area situation, it will look much better with a dance belt on. You're only
And-
helping yourself.
I mean,
Promise
it's
you.
gonna also look, let's just much bigger.
I didn't go
So,
there. I didn't
Hi-yo.
do it, but it's
yeah,
you
but
know
that's a selling point for some
just
people. Like,
just
hey,
Yeah. I don't know about that, but I would definitely say
It will look better.
anybody
You will look better.
that needs it, males, get the dance belt, and I want you to also get the spandex swim trunks that go from your waist to your knees. You can put your dance belt on first, then you can put the spandex type swim trunks looking thing on your waist to your knees, and it will completely smooth out all your lines.
Yeah, so
No
here's
problem.
the thing
Yeah, we
about
call those Spanx.
here's the thing about
I'll take it.
shapewear. Even if it's not a super restrictive shapewear, even if you're not corseted in some way, you're just thinking about, like Anthony said, a spandex undergarment. It creates a way for the fabric of your costume to lay really smoothly over your body instead of your
Mhm.
skin. Like fabric, this is why slips were invented. This is why undergarments exist. Is it makes fabric lay correctly on your body. So I always, no matter what costume I'm wearing, I have some sort of undergarment on underneath it, some sort of shapewear, something that will let the costume smooth appropriately to my body. So think about that when you're planning your costume for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so let's say, you've done the research, you've done your planning, you've made your thing. Like, we're not going to go into the details of how to sew here. We're not going to go into armor building. Those are their own panels, and we just don't have time to do that. We can chat offline about that, and there are other resources. Like I said, the internet is full of things for you to learn how to do things. Um, what are some of the finishing touches that you guys like, that you think really like take a costume and make it that much better? Anthony, is it your
Light.
contacts?
Well, yeah, contact
Yeah,
definitely.
sure. But really though,
Uh,
it is the details. Like that's what I've noticed about my personal cosplays that have quote unquote taken it to the next level, if you will. Um, the contact, but I know everybody can't wear contacts, so that's cool. But it could be battle damage. Like the
Yes.
armor I'm wearing is pristine right now, but if I were to get in and put some battle damage, it now looks lived in.
mhm.
Yeah.
If your costume only has clothes, if that character has tears in the clothes, put the tear in the clothes. It makes it, again, it makes it looks lived in. Like
Yeah.
it's not brand new off the shelf. You've been in it, or you've been in a fight, or whatever that character may have gone through.
Yeah, weathering really
Shading with that as well.
adds a lot of depth and life to things for sure. Anyone else? For me, it's wig styling. I have seen so many really good costumes. Like, the costume is good. This is great. And then I get to the wig, and it's the right color. It's kind of the right length, but it's not, like, it's just not right. It's not styled correctly. And for me, then I lose the illusion of who you are. Wig styling is definitely its own skill set. So if it's something that you want to learn how to do, Google it. I highly recommend wig styling videos by drag queens. Super entertaining,
Yes.
and they're incredibly informative, and they do a lot of the same kind of gravity and physics defying things that we want to do with our wigs based on the kinds of characters that we're cosplaying. So highly recommend that, or find someone who styles wigs. If you don't want to do it, there are plenty of other makers who will style wigs for you, for sure. So my thing is wigs. Um, Dee, what
Yeah.
about you? What's a good finishing touch for you?
Well, I like to put electronics on mine when they're needed. If it's not needed, I just like to make it functional too, like the pockets. For my Batwoman, I have actual bat belt that actually works and has pockets that I can put things in. Just to make it look a little more authentic. Some of the bat suits you get that people will wear, the Batman suits, they'll have just the solid pieces that look like the belt, but make it the actual belt is going to put it over the top a little bit. If you can take something out of one of those, like a batarang, things like that,
Yeah,
um, it just puts it over the top a little bit.
yeah.
But
We are going to transition to questions soon. So while I let people start typing questions, what are some tips you guys have for um, advice you have for someone going to a con for the first time in cosplay or going to an event the first time in cosplay? What are some ways to help them be more successful, more comfortable, have a better time?
It's
I'd say,
okay to say I'm done wearing it and
Yeah.
changing out of it.
Know your
Yeah.
limits for sure.
Yeah, but you don't want to wear yourself out where you don't enjoy the rest of the con, you know, because you've gotten so tired.
Yeah, break in your shoes ahead of time. That's my big one that I tell to people.
yep,
If these are shoes that you got new, wear them around the house, like do your chores and then just wear them, break them in so they're not brand new at the con. And drink water. Oh my God. I'm
Oh
like, this is
yeah.
yeah,
absolute
drink the
like
water.
me not following my own advice. I'm the worst. But the rest of you should be drinking water, whether I am or
Drink the
not.
water.
This video
I
brought to you
just
by Bubbly.
piggyback on what everybody else said. Just make sure you drink water, and then if it's your very first con, do comfort over cosplay, because
Yeah.
Definitely.
if it's your first con, you're gonna go to another con, whether it's bigger or smaller. But for your first one, not saying don't cosplay, but do comfort first, because if it's your very first con, you won't have a routine yet. You'll just be at the
Mhm.
con all day long trying to figure out what you like or don't like.
Mhm.
Most of us that have done this forever, we kind of have a routine. We're like, all right, a couple hours in this, go chill, a couple hours in that, drink till I pass out.
Or
I mean,
whatever you do.
I'm at the
Oh,
point
And
with
it
Dragon
depends.
Con where I only go out
Stay
once the
safe.
sun is down because the heat. I've just
Yeah.
learned the heat's too much. And so
accurate.
I sleep during the day and I'm out at night, you know.
Yeah, I do
And
shorter stints and bigger costumes at Dragon Con. But if I'm, you know, I'd wear casual ones otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. I think not just knowing your limits, but also thinking about if you're wearing something that is cumbersome in some way. Let's say you have a really big wingspan, like my Sephiroth has like a 6 foot articulating wing on one side. I really need to think about where at a convention I'm going to post myself. That's obviously not a costume that
Mhm.
I just run around the halls and walk around a lot in. It's too big, it's going to get broken, someone's going to run into it. But I really think about where I'm going to post myself. I've seen a lot of cosplayers in really big costumes in really small, like itty bitty living space. So
I've done that.
Ravens learned the hard way. It's
Yep.
just it's not good for traffic, and it's not good for the con. It's not good for you. You're not going to be comfortable. So yeah, I would definitely say that. Let's see.
And if it's something you haven't worn to a con before, wear it just around your house for a little while, just so you can see what is affected after a little while. Are
Yep.
your legs hurting? Is your shoulders hurt? Is your neck hurting because something's been too heavy on one spot? Then you can make some adjustments if you need to.
Yeah, definitely road test your
Yeah.
stuff, even if it's just in your own home, so that you can see where things are going to get rough. Other than the spicy trolls that I've seen roaming around in our chat, does anyone have any
Ooh.
questions about getting started or anything that we've talked about? Otherwise, we're just going to keep on babbling about cosplay because we can do
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
send us those questions.
We can do that
Yeah.
forever.
Down with trolls. Down with trolls.
It's the internet; it
Uh,
happens.
It's all
But
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
don't be
People
rude.
get bored.
Well,
What are some things you guys learned the hard way? Like, what are things that you want people to know so that they don't make the same mistakes?
I've got
Anything?
two.
Oh,
The first one I'd say, if you're doing anything like learning to sew or learning foam or learning pepakura, resin, any of that stuff, start very small, because in the
Yes.
beginning you're gonna make a lot more mistakes
yeah.
than you make like perfections. And that's not a bad thing either. What I mean is, like, let's take foam. Foam has a lot of different textures depending on if you put heat on it or not, what kind of paint you use on it, if you seal it, don't seal it. When you do those things, like in the small tests,
Mhm.
you can see, okay, cool, this is what it's like when it dries, as opposed to wasting X amount of dollars on paint and what have you. And you guys kind of said this earlier, but I wanted to piggyback on it. Shoes, 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 shoes. Um, so like y'all were talking about wearing them, breaking them in. I agree with that, especially if you're doing a Naruto cosplay. The Naruto shoes, first of all, you got your toes out.
Yeah.
So think about if it's wintertime or not. Second of all, they're flat footed. Most people don't really wear flat footed shoes all the time. So that's just something else to consider, you know, especially if you're talking about walking a con
For
all
sure,
day.
getting used to it. We do have a question. How does one find a voice? I play a wood nymph, and I'm not sure if she knows how to speak human or not. So for original characters or characters that you've never heard speak, I think that you really have a lot of artistic license to find
Yeah.
whatever that is. Really think about the mood of your character. Are they really excited? Are they more chill? Are they reserved? Are they outgoing? Like just think about them, even though it's not necessarily a human character. Think about the personality characteristics that they might have, I think.
Mhm.
Where's a good place to look for shoes for cosplay? Where do you guys find shoes?
Poshmark, because they are used, so they are already broken in.
Okay.
They are
I've
broken into
actually
someone
found some
else's
good
feet
ones
though,
at
so you
Goodwill.
gotta Goodwill.
Yeah, I found some really good ones. I used for my Batwoman. I got some boots that I used for till they completely wore out because they were just extremely comfortable. I think I did a 10-hour day in them one time. So
Wow. Yeah, I mean, mine come from all over the place. Thrift stores,
Yeah.
eBay. If it's something pretty specific, I can do some
Hmm.
searching for used shoes there. Amazon, mostly just because everything I buy in life comes from Amazon, so I guess my shoes should come
I
from there
should
too.
own stock in Amazon.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's anywhere cosplay specific that I look for shoes. It's kind of the same places that I would look for shoes in other ways, but definitely Goodwill. And then see if it's the right shape, the right heel, the right look of a shoe, and is there some way that you can modify it into more of what you want to suit the costume. For the first few cons, how many cosplays do you recommend?
Oh
Ooh,
God. Oh God.
less
This
than
may
you
not be the right
think.
crew to
One
ask.
Yeah,
a
no, this
day,
is the wrong
maybe.
group to ask that.
So let's say if we're talking about your first cons, one costume is good, maybe two.
yeah,
Yeah.
But don't overdo it. And I'm gonna share a don't do what I did story. Y'all can attest to this. MTAC being one of my biggest cons, I've literally done 6 to 9 costumes in one day, and that'd
Buddy.
be like 2
Buddy.
hours. Red Lantern, go to the
Sounds
room.
like a
2 hours.
DragonCon day
Link,
for me, buddy.
come back.
Yeah.
Black Panthers. So, but I would also say this: when you do all your costume changes, what is it for? Are you going to enter a multiple costume contest? Are you trying to impress someone? Are you trying to impress yourself? Do you love the costume? But if I'm being honest, and it's your first 1 to 3 cons, stop at 1 or 2,
Yeah.
because the experience is way better than the costume wearing.
You will also
yeah.
learn a lot about how to pack and transport your costumes, and I think that doing that on a smaller scale is a doggy. Doing that on
Sorry.
on a smaller scale is you're going to be more successful than trying to learn how to pack and transport 15 costumes the first time. It's just
Yeah.
not going to be a good time for you.
I was saying one a day maybe, but keeping in mind like the day you leave, I always try to wear more comfortable costumes that I could sit in a car in. So I don't have to be like, oh God, I have to change and then pack it. Okay, you can either be up or down. Which one?
We also have a question for you guys. What's your favorite outfit what's your favorite costume you've ever created? What's at the top of your list? Whether that's your favorite to wear or your favorite to have made, I suppose. Because those are not
Hmm,
always the same thing.
I have two. I have
that's
two.
true.
My Batwoman costume, I put so much work and love into that. I, made all of it and everything, and it was a major goal for that one. But then my Mando, that's also had a lot of work in it, and I'm still even tweaking it. But that one, it takes multiple things to make. I mean, you're doing armor, you're doing weapons, you're doing casting, you're doing a lot of stuff.
Flexing
So
those
those are
skills.
the two. Those are the two I consider my favorite to have done.
Anthony, what about you?
Wonder Woman wasn't so bad, but
Mm.
was
Uh, my
I
favorite
didn't
that
write
I've
it.
made, and I actually didn't make it. I bought it off eBay. But I did Joker from Arkham City, and I did the prosthetics.
Cool.
And I did it at MTAC, and I don't like to toot my own horn, but people that know me very well had no clue who I was. Um,
That feels good,
but
doesn't it? When you
Oh yeah, it feels
reintroduce
great.
yourself to someone you've known a really long time because they don't recognize you, that's nice.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, so good. And then I'd say one of my favorites to wear, I do an Umbrella Corporation scientist.
Mhm,
It's literally just
Nice.
pants, dress shirt, and one of those scientist jackets.
mhm.
And why I love it so much is the details that make it pop are stuff like a lanyard and little vials of G virus, T virus. But the other side, it's super comfortable. So if mid con we're gonna stop and go eat, or we just decide to sit and chill for a bit, I'm already in regular clothes. I like comfort. Comfort is king these days.
Raven, real quickly, what is your favorite costume that you
War TARDIS.
Yeah, I figured.
Ah, 'cause it was my second time making armor. The first set of armor I made for it, and I've used that to. I made a second set, and then I made a third set, and I've been using it to make my skills grow. So I love it because I love wearing it. I love Doctor Who, but I also love that it's a costume that allows me to constantly improve it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my TARDIS is one of my favorites that I've made too, kind of for a similar reason. Like it combines a lot of my favorite skills. I made a corset from scratch. It has boning. It's a ball gown, which I love making large dresses. It has like some hand embroidery on it. It has lights in it. I got to work on electronics. Yeah, my TARDIS was a lot of fun.
I
Raven,
do I need to acknowledge the comments here. Yes, I also do love pajamas. If it makes
nice.
pajamas, I'll wear it.
Raven, I
um,
think your most awesome costume to me is when you did Harley cosplaying as Poison Ivy. Am I saying it right?
Oh yeah,
It was like,
uh,
Oh yeah.
Happy Quinn.
yeah, that was like the first costume that I ever saw that was a mashup, and it blew my mind. I was like, wait, you can do that in cosplay?
Yeah, you can. Why would I give up on being the redhead?
Amen. Sydney says, my biggest question issue is regarding online presence, social media marketing. What is your best advice for someone who is trying and failing at Instagram, Coffee, Patreon, etc.? I think defining what failure is really
Yeah,
important
I
there.
agree with that. That was going to be my question. What is failure?
Because it sounds to me like maybe you have set a goal for yourself in those arenas that either is overall unrealistic or perhaps unrealistic in the time frame that you and the amount of effort and honestly money that you have to put into those things. If your goal is way up here, someone with a massive following and is generating revenue from that, the piece of that I think a lot of people miss is the amount of time, effort, and money that goes into
Mhm.
promoting and building that. Like marketing does take not just your time and effort, but also money.
Yeah, and I
So
think
think
if
about
your
that.
goal with that is to become a cosplay guest at conventions, stop looking at your number of followers and start looking at content you can
Yep,
provide. Email
Yep.
conventions and
Mhm.
say, I'm a cosplayer, but these are panels and
for
workshops I
sure.
offer, and use that as to get as that forefront of what you do and who you are. The numbers are whatever. I mean, who whatever, they're just going to be numbers, but
Mhm.
what you offer a con goer as an experience is going to be more memorable. I mean, I've been at cons where I've seen cosplayers with millions of followers sit there and do this at their booths.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Ooh.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm like, who wants to interact with that? Like would rather be talking to people and doing things like this with other cosplayers, and so
Well, yeah, and
use that.
if your goal is income and some sort of revenue, I suggest really thinking about what your brand, like you as a brand, are and what you're offering. Because I think if it's not focused enough into what you're offering, then it's really hard to pull people in to support you because they don't really know what they're going to get. So just having some sort of focus. Are you doing tutorials? Are you offering yourself as a cosplayer? Are you doing prints? Like what is your thing? Is it your skills? Is it your appearance? Is it, what are you offering to them? Is really important. We are nearing the end. We have One more question that I will do that's really quickly though. We have someone who asked to see Dee's Mando. If you command, if you exclamation
Mhm.
link, it should pop up some links, and Cosplay Collective should be on there. And I think there are some pictures of Dee's Mando on there.
Yeah.
And and how far into character do you usually go? Do you spend time practicing? We'll use that as our last question. I do spend time practicing characters,
Mhm.
and that includes voices, catchphrases, poses. Like when you're at a convention, you're going to be asked to take photos. Even if you think your costume is crap and no one's ever going to notice you, they will, and they will ask to take your
Someone will.
picture. I promise you. So have a couple of poses ready to go um, for those instances. What about you guys? Do you practice your characters before you take it on the con floor?
Yeah, I'm crazy anyway, so I'm pretty much practicing all characters all the time. But sometimes I'll slip into the Prince of All Saiyans.
There was a good
I mean,
point in chat right now, which is if you are a destructive character, if you're playing perhaps a mean or somehow
yeah.
offensive character, that does not mean you have to or want to be mean to people. That is absolutely true. There is a fine line in cosplaying villains, so definitely
Yes.
figure out where that is. And a lot of times, the things that we love about villains are not that they're really terrible to people. It's something else about them. So I would
If you're a villain, the trick is, if you're going to be the character, to try to implore people to join you in your badness. Oh, come, let's cause some mayhem over here together. That's rather than being like, I'm a villain and I'm mean to you because I'm a villain. Like, again,
There's
you
a
want
difference between playing the villain and being the villain. As long as you're not hurting other people, that's one thing. It's when you start um, focusing that meanness on someone else that may not even want to be part of that.
right. Don't
yeah.
don't bring other people into your meanness, please.
And be practice at home, but be willing to go with the flow, especially if it's a kid, a kid, wrong way, is gonna love. I said this one yesterday. I do Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony, and if kids come up, I will not break character. I will, and especially if they're dressed as a pony. You're my best friend, and friendship is magic. And have you seen all the other ponies? And la 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 la. And we'll just hold conversations, and you just gotta roll with whatever they're gonna say to you. So
Yeah. And ultimately, I mean, if this is your first time, just do your best. Like whatever feels good for you as far as how far into character and for how long. Like that doesn't mean that I am always in character at a convention. I'm not. Um I don't want I am myself the rest of the time. So I think that finding the times to turn that on and off is really important too.
yeah,
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I wish we had another hour, honestly. I have so much more I could talk
Yeah.
about. It's really such a big topic getting started in cosplay. But thank all of you who were here watching, and Anthony and Dee and Raven. I love you so very much. Uh,
love
Love
you.
you
Thanks for being
too.
here. Let's do this again in the
All right,
future.
Diane. Let's do it.
Peace.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.